So basically, if you're not like eating out of this guy's gooch and supporting Israel on everything, you're a
I've seen a lot more people who might be apolitical for the most part. No, not, normally I don't like to talk about politics, right? I think that there's problems on the left and the right. I can basically kind of position myself in the middle. Become the modern day journalists of our era. I know it's a little bit for some people to accept, to swallow, to the Walter Cronkites of 2025 happen to be Fortnite streamers, TikTokers, but it's just the reality of new media. It was only a matter of time before this happened. And here's ConnorEatsPants talking about a one-state solution to none other than Gavin Newsom live.
Of their history and culture and traditions, and I believe in the notion of sovereignty, and I believe countries'
I was with you, and
themselves.
then when I saw his appearance on the Note Boys podcast, it kind of opened my eyes to research a bit more, and now I think that potentially a one-state solution may be the only possible solution.
Well, we have a little bit of disagreement on that. I'm not falling. I'm not going to align with Bibi Netanyahu on that point of view.
No, I don't align with Bibi. I think that that's more of a a Palestinian support solution, just getting equal rights and being able to live on where they live.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's with different approaches is to reach that same, at least as you've described it, that same perspective. But I've long believed in two-state solution, and I believe it's the appropriate and preferable path.
You think Jared Kushner is going to do a good job?
I mean, honestly, as someone who doesn't play Fortnite, I am a gamer. I love video games. I play tons of video games. And right now I've spent so many hours sinking into finally playing Breath of the Wild. I know I'm really old and behind the scenes on this one, but I was like, you know what? I've always been like, I need to set a time when I start actually trying to get into it. Finally doing it. It was worth the hype. Holy shit. The game is just a masterpiece. Talk about Red Dead Redemption 2 Zelda edition. Anyways, I love it. Great game for everyone who's already played it. Awesome. So I am a gamer. I have my bona fides. I pour hundreds of hours into video games every year. It's my favorite activity to do for pleasure and fun, and actually it's become more healthy as time has gone on. I'll have you know, because it used to be back in the day, all right, that my parents wouldn't let me play video games, and they would be like, instead of playing video games, why don't you read a book? And now everything's shifted to, instead of being on social media, why don't you play video games? Because it's actually healthier for your brain, and it is. If I play video games for an hour, my brain doesn't have the cosmic hatred inside of it. It just goes away, and then I get to travel to Hyrule, and it's fun, and I have a good time. Whereas on social media, I'm like, I'm angry, I'm more angry, oh, now I'm scared, now I'm sad, I'm angry, oh, I'm scared and sad, weird, horny, angry, scared and sad. And so instead of having that weird, shaking of the whole etch and sketch and the brain stuff, the video games actually are quite lovely. So that's the new paradigm. But anyways, famous Fortnite streamers talking to the governor of California, saying out loud in front of a massive audience of thousands and thousands of people. The more I've thought about this, and the more that I'm coming to a conclusion, one in which, similar to the writing of Ta-Nehisi Coates, in which this shouldn't be as heavily a controversial or politicized issue as it is, but we should be opposing apartheid no matter where it takes place, anywhere, no matter what manifestation it does, whether that's the Jim Crow laws and segregation, or, apartheid South Africa and the attempted formation of Rhodesia or stuff like that. We should be opposing apartheid. And in the case of Israel-Palestine, that is a system of apartheid, and we should oppose it. And again, we should be advocating for, it doesn't matter, because the idea of the two-state solution, not on paper, a bad sounding thing. It sounds like the fairest possible option. And it's why a lot of people, including myself, I'd say as much as like 8 years ago, maybe, would believe in the UN partition plan and believe in the idea that this is the most effective pathway forward. Happens to be one in which two nations get their own states without really going too deep into the history and then realizing, well, that's kind of fucked up when one of those two nation states isn't really recognized by previously Canada. Now we sort of recognize Palestine, but most of the nations that advocate for the two-state solution don't recognize one of those two states, which is just in principle fucked up. It sounds like just a form of oppression. Not to mention, at what point do people who are being actively colonized and oppressed and forcibly, institutionally, in many ways destroyed, having their land taken, their culture destroyed, being forcibly starved at points, murdered, massacred, tortured, raped, imprisoned. At what point do they not get rights anymore to demand their own autonomy and their own sovereignty? And this whole sales pitch of the two-state solution seems to have just been a vector for well-to-do liberals to wash their hands of an ongoing colonial process. That's what it feels more like than ever. And it sounds nice, though. It's kind of like, this is the shitty thing about the paradigm between the libs and the right. The right wear their hatred on their sleeves in a lot of cases. Some don't, but normally it's the big difference between having someone coming at you and being like, I hate you because I'm a white supremacist and I hate you for the way you were born because you're gay, you're depraved, and I want to eliminate you from Earth. Okay, well, I mean, that's very clear that you have made your opinions known. You are saying it out loud. You are a hateful monster, and I don't have to have any two guesses about what your true intents are. It is very different than someone being like, I am for human rights, with some terms and conditions and maybe some light oppression baked in there. I'm not going to tell you what that part is, but I can definitely say that I think trans rights are human rights. But at the same time, I think that we need to have a conversation. It's an important debate. It is a debate after all. It's not an issue of human rights really fundamentally. It's an issue of debate, and that debate is just so charged. It's so difficult to have a conversation about this in a time where if you say the wrong thing, there is this kind of cancel culture mob that will come after you. And that's the real issue here, is that we're not able to actually have these conversations and these important debates when really that is the way to meet the other side halfway on a measure which I know the people who are actually affected by this say that their human rights shouldn't be up for debate, but they don't get a say in this because I'm cis and my opinion matters more. So I think that ultimately we should have an important conversation about whether or not children should be able to play on sports teams or if they should have to be further oppressed because I don't understand a thing. And you can see the difference there, right? Like in one of those scenarios of those two, the person who's being very self-evident and very open, right? And in the case of Israeli colonization, there are a lot of members who are just straight up like, like Yoav Gallant does not mince his words. He said, we're fighting human monsters. We're going to deprive them of all food, water, electricity, fuel, medical supplies. He was very clear. I think I'm fighting human monsters. I'm going to dehumanize them, starve them to death, and watch them die. And that's what I want. And I'm very open about that. That's very different than having, say, a Joe Biden talk about how we need to humanize the Palestinians, all right? I am going to be selling all the bombs that are going to be used to genocide them and shipping them off, and I'm not going to stop that. Well, maybe I do have a red line. No, I don't. Red line gone. All right, so get back to that bombing and extermination thing you're doing over there. But while you're doing that, I do want to say that we should, call out Islamophobia as well as anti-Semitism, and we should say that the Palestinians have suffered as well, right? I'm being charitable here, both sides. We got a two-state solution that we're working on. Hopefully one of those two states will eventually be recognized by our side, and until then, here's all the bombs. And all the bombs, and there you have all those bombs, so hopefully you don't do anything bad with them.
Come on, Jared Kushner is part of.
I also saw this wild headline. Apparently, Moist-Critical penguinz0 now has very strong words for Benjamin Netanyahu. Again, back to our normies. If you don't know who Moist-Critical penguinz0 is, very, very famous streamer, very, very famous YouTuber, oftentimes discusses internet culture, memes, video games, movies, that kind of stuff. Definitely not a right-winger. Definitely not a leftist. He sometimes just tries to have a useful conversation. And in this case, I think some people have been praising him for apparently some very strong words that he's taking out against Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu.
It is crazy the times we're living in. I also just saw today fucking Benjamin Netanyahu just openly stating in front of the whole world his plans on brainwashing because so many people are turning on Israel. So he was asked what he plans to do about it. And you know what? Since I'm just yapping, I'm just going to go ahead and go on this topic now too.
I guess I'm curious about what's another game plan if we lose evangelical support for the state of Israel? What's our backup plan to be strong, like outside of the diaspora?
Christian influencers. Okay. You said, you talked about the woke right, and you said, I call it the woke Reich. That's a brilliant observation. The woke Reich, because these people, you know, they're not any different from the woke left. I mean, they're insane. They're movies.
Yeah, that's his strategy, a galaxy brain chess maneuver here.
Also, you know, you might want to test that material out in open mic night. It's not a fair, like, you can't go in front of a bunch of other, like, you know, Zionists and you know, start dropping this and then being like, is that my A material? Is that good? Is that ready for prime time? And then think that it's going to do just as good when you're outside of that. You gotta test it with other audiences, to be totally honest with you.
Call everyone that doesn't support Israel Nazis. Whoa, holy shit. This guy's, he's alting right now. Wow. So basically, if you're not, like, eating out of this guy's gooch and supporting Israel on everything, you're a Nazi.
To secure that part of the base of our support in the United States, that is being challenged systematically. A lot of this is done with money. Money of NGOs, vast. Money of governments, vaster. Okay? We have to fight back. How do we fight back? Our influencers.
Just in case you forgot, Israel literally pays influencers to suck their wiener and just be like these loyal little lapdogs to always just lap up whatever Netanyahu's gooch is sweating out. Like, it's unbelievable. And he's just being, like, super open about it. Like, he is just saying that in front of people's faces, and nobody seems to care.
And secondly, we're going to have to use the tools of battle. And the most important ones are the social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is TikTok. TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And the other one, what's the other one that's most important? X. That's very good. And, you know, so we have to talk to Elon. He's not an enemy. He's a friend. We should talk to him. Now, if we can get those two things, we get a lot. And I could go on other things, but that's not the point right now.
Spoiler warning for those without thinking caps on. Censorship. He's talking about censorship. Damn to free speech. Benjamin Netanyahu's got other ideas. It's something he's talked about plenty in the past. He's not exactly...
So if you've lost the penguinz0s, the moist criticals, if you can't get the moist criticals on board, I don't know if you're going to be able to spend those thousands of dollars on the influencers in the way you think. You know, the real problem here is that I know TikTok was being seen for a long time as a Hamas radicalization center. It was turning the youth into Hamas. And what they were failing to realize when they would put out that lie is that young people, for the most part, have empathy and are a lot smarter than a lot of people usually give them credit for. I know, as a millennial, having grown up in a time where the olds used to tell me, well, your generation is obsessed with avocado toast and you don't buy soup and you play video games and smoke weed all day and that's why you live in your parents' basement. And, you know, enough people were putting two and two together being like, it's actually just really difficult economically to afford a house now. Most, like, people, even if they are working, you can't really afford rent or afford putting it down like $100,000 for down payment to buy the homes. So it's less the whole weed and video games things and more the economy and capitalism. But, you know, thanks for condescending to us. And then they do the same thing for Gen Z. For Gen Z, it's Gen Z, they're obsessed with their goon caves and gooning. It's this new hyper weaponized version of online pornography where they go into goon trances and can't stop gooning. And because of that and all the video games, it's still video games? All right, sure. And all the video games, that's why they can't work hard and be part of the capitalism in the right part. So, but it turns out that showing the world a genocide, and I'm not even talking about just the footage that got out by all the brave journalists who are now dead, because it's the largest amount of journalists that have ever been killed in any conflict in human history, by the way. But not just that, but even the stuff that the IDF was putting out there, the majority of the world can see it's revolting. It's revolting to take pride in war crimes. It's revolting to massacre an entire family, go into the home, steal women's clothing, bras and panties, put them on, and then dance around on children's toys of the kids you just killed. Most people who see that are like, this is fucked up. This, like, no, I'm not going to support this with my tax dollars. What are we doing here? What the fuck is wrong with all of you? Holy shit. I'm revolted. And guess what? Lots and lots of people saw lots and lots of war crimes, and lots of war crimes being done brazenly because the IDF couldn't stop advertising them because they're proud of it. So they would put it out there. Hey, by the way, here's my Instagram. And by the way, here's me wearing a bunch of women's clothing from the family I just massacred. What do you think about that? Nazi shit? The things the Nazis would do? What am I supposed to think about this? Holy fuck, that's really grotesque and fucked up. So yeah, a large percentage of the entire world is against what Israel is doing and what the US is directly supporting and enabling, and want to see that change. And so you are seeing a lot more people who might be apolitical for the most part. No, not, normally I don't like to talk about politics, right? I think that there's problems on the left and the right. I can basically kind of position myself in the middle, in that I understand that there's radicalization and radical extremes happening from lefties and happening from righties. But right now, I have to be honest with you, and I really can't stand this Benjamin Netanyahu guy and what Israel's doing. Well, yeah, there might be a reason for that,
Shy with it. He's very loosey-goosey with the censorship topic, and he's talking about it again. He recognizes how everyone sharing videos and information about the atrocities and all the slaughter of the Palestinians at the hands of the IDF is making people turn on Israel. So now genocidal freak is going up to Elon Musk.
I hadn't pre-watched this. I know no one's going to believe me. That whole bit that I just did, he admitted. He said it out loud. But it's true. It's like, I don't know what you're expecting. There's not an amount of money that you can spend here. And I'm talking to Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, the IOF. You can buy all the influencers. Everyone is for sale, all right? Capitalism has got us in a rough spot. So people will take your money, and they will take that blood money, and they will put out videos for, it just pisses everybody off. But you cannot unsee what has been seen. Like, the eyes of the world have been woken up through this process, and everyone is having to come to terms. There's a reason why you're seeing liberals split into two camps. One, a wholesome, really cozy camp that I think we should be fostering and embracing and just welcoming every single liberal who's like, whoa. So I'm just coming to terms with, like, the West kind of exploits the global South, and that's why we, like, have so much stuff. Yeah, that's totally true. Oh my God, friend, embrace, come hug. We're on board on this. Yeah, that is how the world works. It's wild, right? The other half doesn't want to accept any of this, wants to return to brunch, and is aggressively pivoting to the right. That's where you see these Noah Smiths versus Matthew Iglesias battling online. What the hell? Because on some level, there's a lot of people, right? Like Drew Pavlus, he's like, oh, okay, I see the writing on the wall. I'm going extreme far right. Yeah. If there's an option, if it's like socialism, barbarism, I choose barbarism. Yeah, no, I want to oppress people. I think that there are subhuman different races. I think that they need to be brought to heel by the power of the West. I think that we need the world police. I think if we don't, suppress or oppress, Muslims, then obviously they're going to try and destroy all our Western values. So I'm going full white power shit on the other direction. But there are a lot of liberals who are going in the opposite direction, who are coming to terms now with what is going on and seeing it and being like, oh shit, because we've all been brainwashed. That's the thing. That's why I still have a shred of empathy for, like, liberals who are suddenly starting to see the light and understand how the world works. Because you're since birth, if you are a Westerner, whether you're born in Canada, the United States, or any of these other Western countries, you are fed a myth all day, every day. That the West is benevolent, that it's the freest, most incredible country in the world, it's the land of opportunity. All you have to do is work hard and play by the rules, and that you will be given and bestowed the gifts of Western civilization. And we never talk about where those gifts come from, that is also a myth, that usually really applies to straight white dudes, more so than any other category, cis straight white dudes more so than any other category, or at least it did, and then there are certain changes, mostly because of civil rights activism, not because of, at the end of the day, people were are just willing to acknowledge that the whole thing is a foundation built on slavery and colonization. But more people are coming to terms now with the idea of like, well, yeah, I mean, the benevolence of the West does come at the hands of immense suffering of a lot of the rest of the planet. Maybe there's a better way of doing things, right? Where like we can still have stuff. I don't want to take like, hey, I love stuff. Everyone does. We love our PS5s. I can't afford a Switch 2 yet, but it looks awesome. Big screen, really fun, good shit. But colonial extraction, in order to achieve all these kind of things, isn't necessary. We could still have the stuff, is what I'm trying to tell you. There are ways to make and extract and recycle electronics and other things that don't require us to actually make the lives of lots and lots of people shitty. Like, we can have partnerships with the very indigenous communities and people whom we have colonized, who are willing to do that, by the way. I don't know if you've seen this, but land back movements aren't asking Europeans to go back to Europe. They aren't. They're not like every single one of you whiteys has to return back to your country of origin. They're not saying that. They're just saying you sign treaties. The treaties apparently grant us the actual ownership of the land, so we should be the ones who are in charge of, again, signing property leases, resource extraction. That's basically what this says in a document you signed. So, I mean, if you want to go through with that, and you still get to live there, you can still have your apartments and your homes and all that kind of stuff. You just, instead of paying, property tax to the King of England or the Crown, or in other cases, for whoever is currently the colonizing authority, you might have to pay it to an indigenous band or tribe. And that's not the end of the world. Things are going to be all right. You might even pay less in property taxes, just saying. So, hey, there are better ways forward. You don't have to do all this shitty stuff.
Oh, Mr. Musk, can we do something about, like, all these pesky voices sharing all of this? It's censorship. Super weird, by the way, how a foreign nation seems to have so much pull over things happening in our homeland. Why can Netanyahu come out with his full ass on display, talking about, like, how algorithms on the platforms here need to cater to him, and also he should be talking to Elon about Twitter so they can do something together in regards to, like, the people not liking Israel anymore and what they're having access to. Why is that? Like, that shouldn't be allowed, right? Like, what the fuck? This guy gets to come in and, like, completely wash our fucking freedom of speech in order to fit his censorship agenda? Cool. How about no? Goober? Like, come on. This should be an outrage to everybody, but it's not.
He called Benjamin Netanyahu a goober. All right, welcome to the Resistance, Moist Critical. I'm more than happy to accept you. Hey, by the way, someone pointed out that apparently he got shamed into this take by a new video by a channel called Big Dad, talking about how One Piece is actually very anti-imperial, and the same people who pretend to love it don't understand the meaning of it. So I want to take a look at that too.
Hunger is front and center in the world of One Piece. We see Sanji and Zeph literally starving. We see Alabasta break into a civil war due to water scarcity. We see people picking through garbage for table scraps in the Grey Terminal, the landfill outside the wealthy Goa Kingdom. We see where he feels hungry for the first time in his life. We see a blockade on Law's homeland of Levant. We see Wano suffering a man-made famine under Kaido's brutal occupation. I'm often forced to think of the real-world parallels, that Israel is currently starving children and babies in Gaza with a manufactured famine. There is plenty of food just miles away, but Israel does not let it go into Gaza. There's an abundance. Just like in Marijois, the wealthiest gluttonously consume without ever knowing the feeling of hunger. And do you know how Israel gives food to Gaza? They throw it on the floor. The starving people who are trapped are forced to scurry for food like rats. That's how they view the people of Gaza. By the way, the median age of Gaza is 18 years old. They were walled into a tiny island, but they still had hopes and dreams. They had a life. They endured tragedies generation after generation, but Israel destroyed all of that. They forced them from their homes, made the land completely unlivable, and they continue to exterminate them. After all, that's what you do to rats, so that's what they do to Gaza. How evil is that shit, bro? Literally in One Piece, the most evil mother to ever do brushes off his cruelty to people by calling them insects. You wouldn't consider an insect's feelings before you step on it, and it's played out right before our eyes. You can watch a fictional genocide in One Piece during God Valley, or maybe maybe an apartheid in White Town, or maybe a famine in Wano, and then pull open TikTok on your phone and see the exact same shit on the timeline, except this time it is real. And people are not talking about this, at least not the biggest names with sizable platforms. First, I didn't want to critique anyone even in good faith because I just assumed a convenient chunk of their brain where their conscience resides was missing, and it felt a bit ableist to critique them given their presumed disability.
Jesus Christ! It's all coming back! It's all coming back! I hate you! It's all coming back, you understand? I don't like it! I don't like to think about it!
But I learned something recently that was incredibly obvious and relieving to hear. Mega huge, legitimately awesome toddler influencer Ms. Rachel recently went from YouTube to Netflix and Walmart deals, but this was all done while she spoke out against Israel for months and months now, filming personal videos for specific families in Gaza, making videos about the injured and starving children in Gaza, and holding through a whirlwind of anti-Semitism critiques when it was not as easy to speak out. She's so fucking awesome.
Let's pretend to sleep. Wake up, little bunnies! Skip, little bunny, skip, skip, skip. Skip, little bunny, skip, skip, skip. Skip, little bunny, skip, skip, skip. Skip, 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 don't stop. Good for your soul.
And get this, the fucking New York Times, my bad, asked her to her face if she is funded by Hamas. Hamas! Fuck the New York Times, fuck your whole board and every dollar they have profited through their manufactured consent. All this is to say that Miss Rachel is...
This video goes hard, god damn. I didn't know this channel at all. Hey everyone, go subscribe to Big Dad.
Is sort of proof that speaking out against Israel doesn't hurt your career. In fact, it might help your career.
She recently wrote on Instagram, I want my taxes to help children, not kill them. I want my taxes to feed children, not starve them. I want to build a better world, not bomb it, unquote. In another Instagram post, Ms. Rachel said she would refuse to work with anyone who's not spoken out against the treatment of Palestinians in Gaza.
So when she was interviewed by Democracy Now!, she brought on her friend, fellow activist Tariq from the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund, which is an organization we have donated to for this channel. And at the end of the interview, they asked him, what can people do? He said money for aid is great, but using Miss Rachel as an example, one of the best things people can do is have the people with significant platforms speak out against Israel's genocide. Support the people, the children of Gaza who starve every single.
This is one of the reasons, by the way, that like I know no one wants to have the difficult conversation of how there are all these basically massive channels in the left corners of YouTube that have grown exponentially and have become the bread tube like royalty, and no one wants to actually question why people like Philosophy Tube, ContraPoints don't put out videos about this topic, and the deflection that is usually done in different directions are like, well, what are we going to just, you know, try and silence like some of the biggest voices and advocates for a whole bunch of really good causes simply because they're not talking about this one thing? And it's like this is like without question a defining moment of our time, that one in which, yes, it can actually change the way a lot of the world views, or even the Western paradigm of you know, colonial extraction operates. It's at the center of all of this. I mean, I would highly recommend the channel Andrewism, and he speaks about this, how like, you know, one of the biggest reasons why there's been such an impossibility for Western nations to cut ties with Israel is because this lies at the heart of a lot of the way that the entire Western world has set itself up, and it doesn't want to have to actually ever take into account how things like indigenous genocide, colonialization, resource extraction, how all of that is actually part of the system. No one wants to talk about this, so this is actually a very important thing. And yes, I know there's a lot of important topics online that also require takedowns and big videos like plagiarism. But this is also something that, you know, there's been enough people with really big YouTube channels have shown that they can make content on it. Big Joel, Lindsay Ellis, Thought Slime, Sean, for example, who have made videos on this topic that are still in their own genre, that are still done with their own style of presentation and all that kind of stuff, that bring a lot of attention to the horrifying reality that Israel's committing genocide, and actually do it in an entertaining way that people who might not know a lot about this kind of stuff, like when you watch a Jack Saint video, on The Last of Us 2, the TV series / video game, and then talks about Zionism in that can appeal to a lot of people who might not normally watch a lefty channel like Democracy Now! And maybe they're going to be able to get and ingest some new stuff. The same thing can be said here about a channel that focuses primarily on One Piece content is now talking about how some of the biggest One Piece fans, such as Cr1TiKaL, penguinz0, and others who love One Piece, are unwilling to suddenly make this connection.
Day. Play the clip. But the silence only supports the status quos. Oh, and they've made content about their love of One Piece, so this is still a One Piece focused channel after all. This is a good faith critique to hopefully open these creators' eyes to their silence on the problem of Gaza actually harming their reputation. Whatever your stance on these creators.
Now, I don't know when did this come out? September 28th, so pretty recent. I know both Ludwig recently did a fundraiser. I think he raised over $150,000 for children's relief for Palestinians. And we have, obviously, I was covering it earlier, the Cr1TiKaL video that just came out. I don't know if this was the video that, helped. I don't know if they've seen this. I can't speak to that. But it is interesting that, like, this call out being as strong and clear as it is coming at a time now when you're now seeing more big creators speak out about it.
Now, or after hearing what I have to say, is your business. I need to cut in real quick because we have some big news. A huge part of this video is criticizing some creators that I genuinely watched and cared about and feel genuine disappointment for their position, their voice on Gaza so far. It is currently 9:27, 9 a.m. and as I understand it, last night Ludwig started hosting a charity event, and in the charity event, one of the main 3 charities is the PCRF, the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund, which is fantastic. Rewatching the video, I felt like my criticism still stood, but I personally won't hold the same amount of just pure rage towards Ludwig now that he's taken this step. I hope he does more than this. And as you will see in the video, Ludwig is still a figure worth criticizing. While I have you, like the video, share it with your friends, family, whoever. Enjoy the video. This is a One Piece channel primarily at this moment, and the reason I cover One Piece is because it speaks to me as a story and adventure that reflects the oppression of our real world with a profound hopelessness and sincerity that ultimately creates something more powerful in storytelling than I can even imagine. I know many of you haven't watched One Piece yet, so I want you to know that I'll try not to spoil as much as I can here within some bounds of reasonability. Share this video with friends that haven't watched One Piece. Maybe it'll get them to check it out. And maybe it can inspire them to learn more about Gaza or just support Gaza more strongly. I don't know. Because one of One Piece's most significant themes is incredibly important to us and our reality right now. Maintaining hope in the face of oppression, suffering, with no path forward. The people that present themselves as like us, as working class, are silent. They're wealthy, but they are not owner wealthy. But they are protecting their class position through their silence because they are, maybe just in their mind, closer to the owner class than to the working class. They don't want to go back, and they obviously wouldn't. That is a baseless idea with no evidence. Go ahead, tell me one person who spoke out against the genocide in Gaza who is now lost their platform. They're not an influencer anymore. Give me one. I've seen plenty of people lose access to the law school that they were attending, lose their jobs, but YouTubers and influencers are different. They don't lose their jobs, and they will present themselves like they're going to lose their sponsors, which, number one, wouldn't make them poor or anything. They would just make some amount less. And according to Miss Rachel herself, she still has Netflix deals. She still is getting in more and more toys in Walmart, which is one of the largest companies in the world, in human history.
You took my only food! Now I'm gonna starve!
So the fact is that there is no evidence that influencers lose their money if they talk about Gaza. And if their sponsorships say, hey, you can't do that, we're pulling out, fuck them. Fuck that company. Ludwig, buddy, you can tell me, is it Red Bull? Is it AT&T? I know AT&T, they love Israel. They sponsored your streamer games? I bet you can find another sponsor, bro. Or I guess maybe you just really need that AT&T money specifically. Very cool. One Piece can be a cruel story. After you've seen the Michelin star quality story Oda cooks up, we willfully walk into new storylines fully aware that One Piece will ruthlessly rip out our hearts. And part of what makes these cruel moments so horrifying is that he's adapting real world atrocities, hatred, pain, and suffering into a fictional narrative and world of One Piece. This means that the moments in One Piece that rip our souls from our bodies from sheer pain are particularly powerful and profound because they touch the human condition that the vast majority of people...
Ludwig is like the one person I can't seem to like and just gave up. Not sure why some streamers I love him. I mean, I'm not asking you to give up anybody. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who are like, I'm never going to stop watching ContraPoints videos. I'm never going to stop watching this favorite creator of mine because I've loved what they've done in the past, and I wouldn't be the person I would be today had I not seen video blank, right? Like that one changed me. But also, you should demand better of them, because they have gotten their platforms off the backs of what they considered to be advocating for causes that should be universal, right? Like, we shouldn't stop. Like, it's the same thing with me criticizing the so-called heroes of the libs right now, like Gavin Newsom and Pete Buttigieg, because they're unwilling to like take a strong position on standing up for human rights. If those human rights involve trans people, then all of a sudden human rights are up for debate. Then all of a sudden human rights are, well, we need to meet the other side and understand their argument and things like that, where like ultimately that should be non-negotiable. Like, what are you doing? There shouldn't be an element where it's just like, we got to win elections, says Ezra Klein. It's important to win elections more than it is to actually effectively stand up for a principled stance, because in so doing we can slowly move the compass. We can slowly, like, if we lose an election, well, then worse people get in. So we should basically give up on, say, reproductive freedom and you know, allow forced birthers in red states to be Democrats and run as Democrats, because they'll have a better chance of winning. And it's like, but what are you winning? Is the goal just to win an election? Is the goal just to, like, I know the argument comes down to a trolley problem, effectively, right? Like, there's two sides, there's two teams, you got to pick one or the other, and one of those options, unfortunately, will be slightly better than the other one, even if one of those options does throw some human rights away in the process. And it's like, you're going to get an endless ratchet effect then. You're going to get a back and forth where one side will enact their horrifying, destructive, and fascistic policies, as you're seeing Donald Trump do right now, and then the other side says we want to return things to normal. But what is considered normal now is slightly worse than it was prior to me coming in, rather than I'm going to be transformative. I am going to move things dramatically in a more egalitarian position and framework, and that is what is more important than ever. I'm not promising you status quo. I'm going to be fighting on making the world better. That should be something something worth advocating for, right?
And to reinforce this connection to the human condition, what is the overarching story of One Piece? It follows Monkey D. Luffy, the man-boy stated to be the future king of the pirates, the person who will claim the One Piece, a treasure that strikes fear in the world, because although it is unknown, the people in power fear its potential to change the entire world forever, turning the world upside down. The closer someone is to claiming this treasure, the global superpower, the world government, issues higher and higher bounties that reflects that person's threat to the world government rather than their individual score on a punching machine or something. I look at our world and I look at the world of One Piece, and the truth slaps me so powerfully that I understand that for all the suffering and pain in One Piece, our world is far crueler. The live-streamed Holocaust in Gaza, directly carried out by the IDF, and hatred in Israeli society breaks me. The man-made famine in Gaza is real. Babies die of malnutrition because Israel, with the backing of the United States, specifically blocks baby formula from entering the occupied territory. In Wano, Kaido and Orochi broker with the Yakuza to betray their people of Wano, and in Gaza, Israel arms and allows ISIS-backed gangs to loot and steal aid for starving children. I've only dipped my toes in, but everybody knows what is happening in Gaza. It's a genocide, and in my opinion, a second Holocaust. I've cried so many times to One Piece, and there are moments that if I reread them right now, I would cry again, over and over. I've also cried so many times at seeing the suffering of just children in Gaza. I have young children myself, and I have to reckon with the reality that because they were born in the United States rather than Gaza, They will not be purposely starved, maimed, and shot by soldiers acting through pure malice and cowardice. Just like many One Piece fans cannot forgive the Celestial Dragons for their crimes against humanity, myself and most people in the world can never and will never forgive the IDF and Zionists more broadly. I wouldn't permit a Zionist to wipe my ass at a nursing home, let alone be my brother or my friend locked in struggle. Zionists, Celestial Dragons, and Nazis are all synonymous with each other. They seek an ethnic supremacist order where outgroups must be eliminated. And once that group's eliminated, you have to create a new outgroup, and ultimately, fascist institutions crumble or consume themselves, because if they continue to eliminate outgroups, eventually the only thing that will be left is itself, and it will have to consume itself until it can no longer be maintained. My personal belief is that everyone with a platform should be talking about this. Money is not as significant as speaking against the genocide. How many times in One Piece does Luffy and others use their voice to declare their undying support for those that are suffering? So creators, it is time to speak up. Continuing to be silent should and will hurt you in the long run, but even more importantly, it hurts your soul.
I have no soul.
Wow. Damn. This channel. Was not expecting a One Piece channel to, you know, explain this so well and go this hard.
If you want to take that extra step, you can support me for just $1 a month on Patreon or here on YouTube as a member. Feel free to follow me on Twitch. The amount of criticism you'll face is nothing compared to the support you'll receive.
Yeah, I'm obviously not going to ruin the whole video for you. I've got the link in the chats. I'll share it as well, but it's called Luffy Would Hate Them. And I don't know if Moist Critical saw this, because, you know, the odds are it could be either way. But whatever it was, something has definitely propelled him into speaking out very strongly against what is taking place right now. And that should be as embraced as the lack of it should be called out. And in both directions. I think everyone who's still with massive platforms calling themselves anything left of liberal, who's remained silent on this, does have an absolute duty to speak out and to continue to raise awareness of it, especially at a time when Israel has definitively shown that they want to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on propaganda in the other direction. And you are pushing up against massive tech lords, you know, multi-billion-dollar companies, corporations, AI systems, all of them that are getting more and more entrenched into supporting and funding this entire colonial project.
So thank you so much to our patrons for making this show possible. We could not fund it without you. And if you want to join, please check out patreon.com/theserfs to unlock bonus episodes, uncensored content, and all the good stuff. Thanks to Anna Loves Riley, Addercap, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hegbard Salim, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, Tigwick, and Words Greenwood.